Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The press says that global warming is threatening the future of the Winter Olympics. Vox ran an article, What the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics Say About Climate Change. Let's take a look at what actually happened at the Beijing Olympics. Athletes have been hitting out at Olympic organizers with complaints about freezing conditions and quarantine rules. The 2018 Winter Olympics was one of the coldest ever. And despite the record cold, the press was upset that NBC wouldn't acknowledge that the Winter Olympics was threatened by global warming. Now let's go back in time and look at some Olympics which actually were threatened by warm weather. The 1932 Winter Olympics at Lake Placid, New York almost had to be canceled because of a lack of snow and warm temperatures. The organizers had to truck in snow from Canada and spread it on the ski slopes in order to make the events happen. A Japanese ski jumper was injured on the slippery, wet, warm snow. The 2018 and 2022 Winter Olympics were very cold, but the 1932 Winter Olympics was quite warm. Bobsled racing was postponed due to rain. For weeks prior to the 1932 Olympics, New York was having record warmth. On January 14th and 15th, 1932, New York had their warmest January temperatures on record. 20 years later, in 1952, the Oslo Winter Olympics almost had to be canceled because of warm weather and a lack of snow. More than 300 soldiers working day and night had to shovel snow onto the slopes in order to make the events happen. The 1960 Winter Olympics at Squaw Valley, California also almost had to be canceled because of a lack of snow and warm weather. Squaw Valley, California, rain turned to snow just in time to avert possible disaster at the Winter Olympic Games. Let's take a look now at how the press tried to rewrite the history of the 1960 Olympics. This is a 2006 article. 46 years ago this month, the world's athletes frolicked in the snow at the 1960 Winter Olympics in Squaw Valley, California. They weren't frolicking in the snow. What they were actually doing was struggling to find snow. And leading climate scamster Katharine Hayhoe said, by 2060 or so, if we don't change our ways, holding another Winter Olympics in Squaw Valley would be very difficult. She's not only misrepresenting history, but she's also making incorrect claims that human behavior controls the climate. This is what Squaw Valley looks like today. There's lots and lots of snow, and they're expecting another 50 inches of snow over the next 10 days. The only thing that's changed is the name of the resort. It's been altered because woke people didn't like the name Squaw. The reality is that autumn and winter snow extent has greatly increased in the northern hemisphere over the last 55 years. This is because cold Arctic air is penetrating further and further south, which means that snow falls in areas where precipitation used to fall as rain. The press simply makes up a story and runs with it over and over again, even if it flies in the face of all available evidence. I'm going to finish this video up by discussing how this relates to the bigger picture of the global warming scam. In 1990, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change published this graph. It showed that Earth started warming in the middle of the 19th century, warmed up to about 1940, and then started cooling again. It included a medieval warm period, which was much warmer than the present, and a little ice age, which was much cooler. But in the 2001 report, they used Michael Mann's fraudulent hockey stick, which erased the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. The hockey stick graph showed very rapid warming throughout the 20th century. The other competing temperature reconstruction in 2001 was from Keith Briffa. His reconstruction showed that 1932 and 1952, when the Olympics almost did have to be canceled due to warm weather, were among the warmest of the last 600 years. Whereas recent Winter Olympics have been suffering because it was too cold. In NOAA magazine from 1974, they talked about the warm weather from 1890 to 1940 and the cooling trend since the late 1950s. The average growing season in England is already 2 weeks shorter than it was before 1950. Since the late 1950s, Iceland's hay crop yield has dropped about 25%, while pack ice in waters around Iceland and Greenland ports is becoming the hazard to navigation it was during the 17th and 18th centuries. In other words, Briffa's reconstruction was correct, whereas Michael Mann's hockey stick is completely fraudulent. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on climate racketeering for the last 15 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, Caesar, Toki, Upala, and the 4 new puppies on the web at realclimatescience.com.